Hello guys, welcome back. Episode number 1 of this course where we are going to develop a full-featured application using Vue, an application that supports CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete on one entity called employee. In this episode, I am going to talk about the technologies that we are going to use, and I am going to set up the application. As I showed you in the previous episode, by the way, I have already set up this simple application and I am currently running it, as you can see here. But I'm going to show you how I have done this. And then from the next episode, we will continue, developing the application. So first, let's talk about the technologies that we are going to use. So of course, we are going to use Vue.js version 3. It's a front-end UI framework that we will use to, build reactive user interfaces. We'll use Axios. There is a playlist on my channel about Axios because we want to communicate with a backend API. We will use Axios. Of course, we can use other, options like, for example, Fetch API, but I have decided to go with Axios. So it's like an HTTP client technology useful for communicating with backend APIs for fetching, posting, updating, deleting data. The next one is Vite. Vite is like a build tool for front-end applications. You can use Vite when you want to develop React, Vue, or Angular applications. It allows you to, set up your project very quickly. It has hot reloading inside of its, dev server, which can be really helpful when you are, rapidly developing your application. For our backend API, I am using JSON server. It's like a mocked backend API, which exposes some endpoints. We are going to communicate with an endpoint that exposes, information about employees. So we are going to, communicate with that endpoint for, implementing our CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete. You can, of course, have your own REST API as well. And we are going to, of course, use Node.js. Node.js is JavaScript runtime for using JavaScript on the server. So we need it when we want to develop our Vue application using Vite. We need it when we want to install dependencies and more. So what are some of the concepts that you will learn? One thing that I am going to focus on in this course is to introduce you to the concepts in developing applications using Vue. So I am assuming, for example, that you are already familiar with Axios for communicating with a backend API. If you're not, again, there are courses on my channel that you can use. But I am assuming you know nothing about Vue, or you know very little about Vue. You haven't had the experience of developing a real application using Vue. So I want to show you the concepts in developing applications using Vue, like for example, components, props, reactivity, directives, and so on. And I want to not only tell you about these, I'm going to show you how to implement them. And if you're coming from other front-end frameworks and libraries like Angular and React, these are going to be somewhat familiar. For example, components, right? So they are modular UI pieces that you develop once and you reuse, right? Or props or reactivity, directives, for example, vif, v4, vmodel. We have the same thing in Angular. So these can be, rather familiar. I am going to talk about router, Vue router, which helps you to, implement client-side routing. So without posting back the application to the server, you're allowing the user to navigate between the different views and pages of your application without reloading the application. So client-side routing. About Axios, of course, as I told you, we're going to implement our communication with our backend API using Axios. We are going to implement the 4, CRUD operations: create, read, update, and delete. One thing that I am going to talk about is composition API versus options API. So these are two, approaches when it comes to developing components in Vue. So composition API is more flexible, and this is something that we will use in this tutorial, but I am going to show you the options API as well. This helps you to, organize your logic inside of your components. And of course, we will talk about state management using Pinia. So state management again helps you to centralize the code for managing the state of the application. So the data that the application needs in the front end is going to be centralized inside of a store, right? Something like Redux in Vue, in React, I'm sorry. And we are going to use Pinia for that. I'm going to show you how to use Pinia for state management. And we are going to see how we can, manage and share reactive state across our components. So as I told you, the first step is to set up our application using Vue. And in order to do that, we can use Vue CLI. Vue CLI helps us with developing our applications when we want to, for example, scaffold a component or develop other parts of the application. We have the same thing in Angular. We have Angular CLI. Angular CLI, for example, helps us with creating components using, for example, ngGenerate command. Then we need to install Node.js from this URL. I have already installed Node.js. And then you are going to use Vite to create your Vue application using this template Vue. This is the name of the application. Again, I have already done this, and I am going to show you. The name of the application is going to be Piru's Employee Vue CRUD app. We are going to use the latest version of Vite, and we are going to name the application either Vue CRUD app, or in this case, I have decided to go with Piru's Employee Vue CRUD app, and then the template, of course, is Vue. So if you take a look at the application in package.json, this is the name of the application. And as you can see, I do not have a lot of dependencies. One dependency that I have right now is Axios, which is going to be used for communicating with the backend API. And I've got Vue Router. So Vue Router is used when you want to implement client-side routing. You want to allow the user to navigate to different pages and views of the application without posting back the whole page to the server. And by the way, as I told you, right now I am on the main branch. We are going to create different branches for our application. And then we are going to navigate to the application folder, install the dependencies. I have already done so. And then we are going to install Axios and Vue Router. I showed you that I have already installed Axios and Vue Router, and then we are going to run the application using npm run dev. So inside of your app package.json, you have this script, so you can run your application using npm run dev, and that will run the application on this port, and you will build the application in VS Code and see the result in the browser in real time. So this launches the dev server. You will see the URL of the application. And then for the backend, API, as I told you, I am going to use JSON server, which is, a dependency, a package that you can use to kind of create a full REST API endpoint in a kind of a mocked way. So like create a fake, let's say, REST API. It is very easy to set up because the focus of this course is not on developing backend APIs. So we are going to create that backend API using JSON server. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it. And we are going to consume the endpoints that backend API provides so that we can fetch the data associated with an employee, or for example post the data of an employee, and so on. I'm going to show you how I've done this in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching this episode till the very end, and stay tuned for the next one.